Hey everyone, knee-jerk reaction time after a loss that, look, back in August, whatever your expectations were, I'm sure most of you Mizzou fans are probably hitting reset on that now because the third loss has come, and that means no more playoff. We'll stop talking about that for the rest of the year. After Mizzou falls 38-17 to Texas A&M to fall to 6-3, 2-3 in the SEC. A&M remains unbeaten, and the Tigers take a loss that looked familiar to other A&M losses. Let's be honest about that. Tigers have not been able, even under Jimbo Fisher, they've taken losses to Texas A&M that were pretty lopsided under Eli Drinkwitz. So now you have a bit of another one. And look, it didn't feel lopsided for a ton of the game. Mizzou held their own in the first half, I thought, up until a back-breaking turnover where a true freshman quarterback doesn't feel a blitz. A&M recovers a fumble and rumbles all the way to the 2-yard line to then punch in a touchdown right before half. And it didn't feel over at that point, but you knew that this was going to be a high hill to climb because you knew that at any point if A&M was going to go up 2 in this game, that it was going to be tough. It was going to be really tough for a freshman quarterback like Matt Zowers. Look, everyone's going to have takes on him today. I think it's really hard to put a whole lot of expectations so early in a career like this, even for a quarterback as talented as he is, to have this be the case. So, look, not a feel-good loss for Mizzou at all. Loss is supposed to feel good, but this one could have a whole lot of meaning for Mizzou's future, not just this year, but going beyond, which we'll get to here in a bit. But here on the knee-jerk reactions, if you are watching on YouTube or on Facebook, thanks for joining us. Be sure to leave a comment down below and tell us your thoughts on this loss for Mizzou. If you're listening back on the podcast or on the YouTube channel, thanks for doing that. You can still give us a comment and a like and subscribe to our channel if you aren't already. But we're going to break this down as we usually do every weekend when Mizzou plays. I'll have 5 takeaways. You can give me your takeaways as always. And we'll kind of run through how this happened for Mizzou, how it kind of got out of hand towards the end. And the fourth quarter, for the most part, was kind of just academic. And that's not what you wanted against this A&M team like Mizzou. That there was reason to believe that they could stay in this game, but it just didn't happen. And I think a lot of that is still due to A&M just flat out being better. I think we're going to have takes on Mizzou, and we're going to tell you what Mizzou did wrong in this game to not give themselves a chance. But I think flat out, just the way that these two teams played, the A&M showed that they're right now far and away the stronger team. And they'll be in the college football playoff, and they'll get a chance to show that against the other top teams in the nation. And Mizzou won't. It's usually as simple as that a lot of the time, especially when these scores take place. So why don't we get started here with my first takeaway, which is Matt Zowers looked like a true freshman in this game. And whatever you were expecting from Matt Zowers, if you were saying that, oh, hey, we're going to unlock a new part of this offense, we're going to throw downfield some more, this guy's got a live arm. Yeah, Bo Prabila was great, but he didn't tend to make a lot of those deep shots. So maybe this guy can. He really played well in that Vanderbilt game. I'm not saying he didn't. He did play well in the Vanderbilt game in mop-up duty, not mop-up duty, but relief duty, essentially, to try and keep Mizzou in the game, and played very well in that situation. This is a very different one, though. You have to recognize that those two spots are not the same. When Matt Zowers runs into the game in the second half by necessity because the starter gets hurt, he's running on adrenaline at that point, and he's falling back to what he has practiced as much as possible. The playbook probably gets simplified a little bit more in that situation, and you just try to see out the game at that point. You're still trying to win it. You're still trying to get back in, but Zowers is playing a little bit above his head because that's naturally what you do when you're not expecting to be relied upon in those situations. Usually when you have a talent ability that he does, that ends up being the case. But when you now know you're the guy, the other team knows you're the guy, and both of you get 2 weeks to prepare against each other, well, things even out, and now you have more time to think about it. And when a true freshman steps into that role, it becomes very unpredictable as to what can happen. The most maybe looked over or passed over players sometimes play above their head in that situations, or the most talented, 4-star, 5-star guys in those situations will be a little underwhelming. There's a big, wide spectrum as to what can happen. But generally speaking, when you're out there for the very first time as a starter and you are given the full game and you're going up against a top 20 defense in the nation, it's going to be pretty tough. And it was tough for Matt Zowers today. He was 7 of 22, 77 yards, and no touch interceptions. I mean, maybe that's the one thing that you like, is that for the most part, he didn't put the ball in danger. He was going to need a lot of help today. I think that's certainly the case. That being said, when he did get the help, I think there were plays out there to be made. There were throws out there to be made that he didn't make. Plain and simple as that. I think the one that stands out the most was when they went for it on that 5 right after they got the offside penalty on the missed field goal by Robbins, where they tried it from 50. It didn't go, but they got the offside penalty. That created 4th and 5, and they decided, okay, let's go for it. Zowers has Donovan Olubade on a slant pattern, ready to fire him the football, and he throws it behind him. And look, for the normal quarterback, it's not the easiest throw, but generally speaking, when you're playing at this level, you got to make it. That's what it comes down to. So at times, going into this game, I kept saying to myself, look, Matt Zowers is good enough to make the throws that maybe keeps Mizzou on schedule and moves the football to a general degree. But every so often, he's going to need to make some throws that wow you. And he did once or twice, but even that one, which is pretty straightforward on a 4th and 5, couldn't make it. And there were other throws like that. There were a few misfires. I'm not trying to bash Matt Zowers. It probably sounds like that, but I don't think this is a referendum on what he's going to be at Mizzou. This is what happens with true freshman quarterbacks when they're thrown out there for their very first most of the time. And so you have to recognize that whatever your expectations were about Zowers, it be through the lens of this is the first time he's doing this in college. And by the way, lost an entire senior season in high school last year due to injury. So when you talk about the first game that he started in quite a while, I mean, it adds up to he had a few misfires. Then they came in key spots that set Mizzou back a little bit. And then you add on to the fact that there were some times where Mizzou wasn't good enough to support him there. I mean, a drop or two, bad protection, whatever the case may be. We'll talk a little bit about what the run game was for Mizzou in this game. But, I mean, when a true freshman quarterback is in the pocket there and it's going to take some time for him to feel a rush, especially from this particular defense, it just was a bad recipe for him to make his first start because Mike Elko on 3rd down just messes with your mind. And that's what happened on the fumble play, on the sack fumble that set up A&M's touchdown at the very end of the half. Like, the Mike linebacker's just hiding, and he's looking like a guy that might just be a spy, drops back in coverage, but then all of a sudden he comes around to the field end and creates an odd rush that Zowers can't get away from. Is it on the offensive line? Is it on the O coordinator? Is it on the team? I don't know. Is it on Zowers? I don't know. But generally speaking, the quarterback does have to feel that rush and have an out to go to or a hot route or something like that. I'm not saying that Matt Zowers can't recognize that in the future. I'm saying that in the very first time that he was given the keys to an offense, he was unable to feel at that time, and it unfortunately set Mizzou back at the end of the half in a major way, because that was the play that really swung this game. Like, Mizzou can drive down in that situation under 2 minutes to go. I think they probably would have pushed for a touchdown, because right after that missed field goal, I mean, I don't know how you're feeling about your kicking situation. Look, Oliver Robbins did make a 49-yarder today, so wow. Okay, we'll see what he is. I have a feeling they might just have him be the guy going forward. Who knows? Or him on picks, on field goals and Robbie Meyer on PATs. I don't know. Lots to figure out there. We'll talk about special teams in a bit too and how that was an issue. But generally speaking, that was the play that swung the game. And it was mostly created by the fact that A&M knew how to feast upon a true freshman quarterback that was for the very first time. Sometimes that's all it boils down to. And look, everything will be a learning experience for this guy for the remainder of the season. I would expect that he plays the remainder of the season. Even if Bo Prabula had an outside shot to come back, I wouldn't bring him back in this situation. Zowers has already burned the red shirt. Give him the reps, see what you've got in him, and we'll see if he improves from this. But it was just a game that if you know how true freshman quarterback play in their very first start, you probably expected what was going to happen with Matt Zowers. If not, if you were basing all of your thoughts on Matt Zowers after what he did in the Vandy game, you probably felt disappointed. But that's, I don't think, a very fair measuring stick for what Zowers is early on in his college career. He can continue to get better, but right now it's going to be a lot to take in. And SEC defenses know how to affect these types of QBs that are young. They're still trying to learn the full offense, realize their full potential. Coaching staff trying to know how to call for these quarterbacks, things like that. So, I mean, I feel like I've been repeating it for a while. This is what true freshman quarterbacks do most of the time. It doesn't mean that Matt Zowers is going to be a bust. Let's not go all the way to that conclusion. He can still be very good here, but there are growing pains every so often. And how well can you expect to do against an undefeated team that is very clearly, I think, going to be in the college football playoff? Like that, I mean, if they lose 3 times the rest of the season, then probably not. But they're not losing 3 more times. They will be in. No question about it, A&M will. I think this pretty much solidified it. So we'll see what the next game looks like for Matt Zowers against Mississippi State. Again, I don't think the whole team around Matt Zowers was good enough today either. But Zowers played like a freshman, and it shouldn't be all that surprising that it happened in a game like this. Okay, because you had a true freshman quarterback, you had to rely upon him. And today, it just wasn't consistent enough. Now, let me be clear at what I'm saying on this, because the numbers finalized on the box score look very good for Mizzou running-wise. But here's what I mean when I say the run game was inconsistent. And you might get angry at me for this. It might be a bit of a hot take. But here's the truth. I'm okay with the staff running Jamal Roberts more than Ahmad Hardy based on how this game went. That's how I feel. It was not consistent enough from the guy that everyone expected to be the guy for this backfield. If the way that you thought Mizzou was going to pace themselves in this run game was through Ahmad Hardy, then it was not consistent enough. It just wasn't. Take away Ahmad Hardy's first and last runs in this game. He started out with a 40-yard run, and then his last run, when the game was basically over, Mizzou was down 3 scores. He breaks off for a 45-yard touchdown. He finishes with 13 carries, 109 yards. On the surface, that looks pretty good. Touchdown added in, that's even better. That's 8.5 yards per carry. But take away those 2 runs, and Hardy was 11 carries for 24 yards. That's not good enough. It's flat out not good enough. Here were the other runs that Ahmad Hardy had in this game other than the 40-yarder and the 45-yarder. He had carries of 3, 1, 2, -3, 4, 2, 3, 3, 0, -2, 11. Now you might say, they didn't give him the ball at all in the second quarter. He had no carries in the second quarter. He only had 3 carries in the first half. I get it, but started to give him 2 carries right out of the gate in the second half, and he did nothing with those carries. He went for 2 yards, and then he lost 3. So Mizzou was set back, and then they put in Jamal Roberts right after that, 10 yards. That's the thing. Jamal Roberts was the more consistent runner in this game, and that's why Mizzou used him more. And I don't blame them for that. 17 carries for 110 yards, and Roberts had 6 of those carries of 5 yards or more, much more than Ahmad Hardy did. 6 of those carries, I should clarify, 6 carries of 5 yards or more in just the second quarter. So that's why Mizzou was going to Roberts more than Ahmad Hardy, because Roberts was running better in this game, just objectively. And you might call out the offensive line on that, but is the offensive line blocking Roberts but not Hardy? That doesn't make any sense. Just flat out, Hardy was not living up to what all of us thought in our minds Ahmad Hardy was going to be in this game, aside from 2 runs. And one of them ended up being meaningless because it came when Mizzou was already down 3 scores in the fourth quarter. And okay, great, you get your touchdown. But they needed that sooner. And I think it was there for the taking for Ahmad Hardy, and it just didn't happen. So, look, I'm not going to say the run blocking was perfect. I'm not going to say it was always bad for Hardy and always good for Roberts. I'm not a good enough expert on offensive line play to know the difference. But Roberts was the better runner in this game. And so that's why they ran with him more. I'm sure they would have wanted to run Ahmad Hardy a little bit better or a little bit more often. But they decided that they were tired of the 2 and 1 yard carries that Hardy was having in this game. So I don't know what that means for going forward. It seemed a little bit off when Mizzou was trying to stay ahead of the sticks. There were a few penalties that sent him back. But when you run it on first and you get 2 yards, and you run it on second and you get 1, now you're in 3rd and 7 and you're in an obvious passing situation, and A&M's going to start teeing off on you with their pass rush. And that led to Mizzou having a not so great 3rd down conversion rate in this game. It was fine, 5 of 13, but not what you want, and certainly not enough to beat A&M. More than A&M has given up on the season. They were 22% 3rd downs allowed on the year. 5 out of 13 is more than that, but there were way too many 3rd and long situations that Mizzou, heading into the game, they had to make sure they avoided as much as possible. They didn't. And it was largely because the runs that they set up to try and get to 3rd and medium, 3rd and manual, just weren't effective enough, especially not when Ahmad Hardy was in the game for most of the time. It was working when Roberts was in there. So that's why they played him more. So I don't really want to hear much of, well, they didn't give Ahmad Hardy enough opportunities in this game. No, they did. Maybe not in the second quarter. You can say that he should have gotten a few more there, but when he didn't necessarily take advantage of right out of the gate, he bursts that first carry for 40 yards, and then he goes for one or two the very next ones. Well, yeah, you're going to try and change the pace a little bit and go to Roberts at that point. And so, yeah, Ahmad Hardy, I would have liked to see maybe one or two more carries in the second quarter, but a criticism of this offense in past games not too long ago, within the last few weeks, was keep going to what was working. Well, Jamal Roberts was working, so they kept going to him. And I don't blame Mizzou for that. Ultimately, the run game was the best part of their offense. It wasn't – their offense as a whole wasn't great today, and there are several reasons why. I don't think one much larger than the other. But Jamal Roberts was the better back in this game that Mizzou turned to, and I think that was right. It's not to say that he's a better back overall than Ahmad Hardy. I still think Hardy is the better one, but in this game in particular, that wasn't the case. So Hardy has to be better for the next one. If Ahmad Hardy is going to be the back that everyone expects him to be, the workhorse going forward, well, have a more consistent game than he did today. Don't have 2 40-plus runs and then none of your other carries go past 5 yards. You got to be more consistent than that. So the way Mizzou fans, I'm sure, and maybe Mizzou's staff in particular, envisioned the run game was inconsistent today, and it set Mizzou back in ways that A&M was able to take full advantage of. Tee off on third and longs, this and that, and this is the result that you get. But here's another big problem now. And folks have been saying it for a while. I have been kind of holding off on it, but I can't today. Special teams is a major issue. It really is. Mizzou's got really bad special teams across the board. Maybe the only bright spot is one of their dynamic kick returners, Demarion Folks, who broke off a couple big returns to start off the second half. One of them, though, got negated by a holding penalty inside the 15, which then if you go half the distance, that sets Mizzou at their 7. And that was the first drive of the second half where, okay, you got the gut punch at the end of the half with giving up the touchdown after the sack fumble, but maybe, you get the ball to start the second half. Maybe you can turn that drive into a score, get on the board, and you're still in this game. Well, when you start off with a penalty on special teams to essentially set you back, and now you're trying to be as careful as possible because you're backed up and you go through the run game, and then the run game gets stopped because Hardy gained 2 yards and then went 3 backwards, and then you're in 3rd and 11. And Mizzou's drive, it was interesting. Like, after Roberts got that 10-yard carry, people thought go for it. I actually wouldn't have minded in that situation, but Mizzou decided to punt there. And so there was that set them back in a huge spot where they maybe could have climbed it back into a game, but you already set yourself back with the special teams gaffe, or the holding penalty, I should say. But the real gaffe was the fake punt that A&M ran, where they've got a direct snap to the protector. He runs 48 yards, just waltzes right around the scrum and gets to the middle of the field where there is just a ton of space. And honestly, it was not hard to see coming, because I saw a few punts that A&M had early in the first half where I'm seeing gunners completely uncovered on one side. Mizzou's got nobody over there, and A&M didn't run a fake punt, but I very easily could have seen the punter, if the punter had just maybe held for a little bit longer, saw that he had a receiver wide the freaking open on his right, which obviously he has to be looking. He has a job to just go and cover the kick, so he's not looking around. But like, if A&M saw that there was absolutely no one on that right side and they decided to check to a fake punt pass, that easily could have worked. And I think they realized that throughout the game. And hey, Mizzou is just leaving guys. They're leaving all kinds of space on this one side when they're going to drink after the game that they were in max return on the fake punt play. So they were trying to get as much blocking as possible in the middle of the field so that they could allow a big return after that kick. But it was just A&M realizing the tendencies of Mizzou and Mizzou not adjusting and just not being ready for it in that spot. And it falls at the feet of Eric Link. I mean, ultimately Eli Drinkwitz. And that's what Drinkwitz did in the press conference today. He took all of the blame. I mean, certainly that's right for him to do. He kept saying, well, yeah, they made the call, but I approved the call, so it is on me. I mean, very clearly trying to push any blame away from other people except for himself, which is a noble thing. But look, people who made the call most likely was the special teams coaching staff, which is led by Eric Link, and that was a terrible call. And there have been way too many miscues on this special teams unit, whether it's receiving or kicking, that have set Mizzou back in a lot of different ways. And I mean, it was meaningless towards the end, but you even talk about at the very end of the game, Jamal Roberts lets a bouncing kickoff bounce over his head, and A&M recovers that. Just way too many things that are inexplicable sometimes on special teams that Mizzou is letting up. They just cannot allow that to continue. And look, I don't advocate for coaches to be fired. I know a lot of people are asking that for Eric Link. Maybe it's possible that he, is shown the door at some point soon. I wouldn't think that they do that until the season at least. I mean, the playoffs gone. There's not much that you're playing for at this point. So what's the use? Like, that you can move on at the end of the season potentially and be just fine. And I'm sure Eli Drinkwitz, with the way that he has tried to protect his assistants in the past, I'm sure probably at least just see out the season with him and then maybe part ways after that. I don't know. And I'm not saying that needs to happen, but just it's bad right now. Special teams is tough. And look, they've been dealt a tough hand. Kicker got hurt very beginning of the season. It's not a good situation right now, although we'll see what Oliver Robin has. I'd be interested to give him more opportunities now. He hit the 49-yarder. He clearly has the range in him. I guess the question is accuracy with him. They felt that Robbie Meyer was a more accurate kicker and Robbins wasn't. I guess now it could be flipped around. I don't know. But there's that, and there's also the fact that Mizzou has just not been punting well this year. And usually it's not something that a whole lot of people pay attention to, and you don't want to have to do that. But it's not a difference maker right now. Connor Welseman today averaging 37 yards per punt. He did have a long of 52. That was a good one. 2 kicks inside the 20, but there was one that was in the second half that was just bad. It kicked at 33 yards, and I think it was returned for another 5, so he only netted 28 there. It just hasn't been a difference maker this year for Mizzou. So, look, a lot of things to clean up in this phase of the game that can be very important. It can swing game. And it wasn't the play that swung it for Mizzou, but you could point back to it and say, look, Mizzou's down 21-7 at that point. They had just gotten a touchdown. They had held A&M on third down. They're lined up to punt. You're about to get the ball back, and if you score again, then it starts to get interesting again. Kind of late in the third quarter, I believe. But then you give up that big play, and A&M gets set deep in your territory. You do hold them to just a field goal, but they make it a 3-score game again. And that's a swing that you can't afford in these types of contests. So, special teams was a major issue. And I don't foresee it getting better under the current coach at the moment. So I don't know what's going to happen with that. We shall see. But it has just not been good. This game in particular, no doubt, but you can even harken back to other games where it just left a lot to be desired, or there were just plays, miscues that really set Mizzou back. The other aspect of this, I mean, the defense, look, good first half, second half got away from them, but ultimately, when you play A&M, you've got to focus on just getting as many negative plays as possible. And Mizzou got some, but just not enough today. I mean, several guys had good games, I think. I mean, they got a sack on Marcel Reed. I believe that's the first time he's been sacked in a month. So at least you have that. They did their job, no doubt, in the first half of keeping Mizzou in it. Like they held that team to just 7 points in that first half of play. I think you really like the way that they at least started the game. If you go half by half comparison, they gave up 148 yards of total offense in the first half, but then in the second half, 316. Things got away. A&M started to run the ball a lot better. Marcel Reed got more comfortable. He was uncomfortable in the first half. I think, again, Mizzou played really well against him in that setting. But the more and more times that they had to be out there, because A&M controlled time of possession, they possessed for about 11 more minutes than Mizzou did, just the dam eventually broke, and A&M's offense did what it has done to a lot of teams on the road. They have scored 40-plus points in pretty much all of their road games. They didn't get quite there today, but it was very close to be. If they really wanted to, they could have. They were really trying on that last possession where they recovered the botched return by Mizzou with less than 3 minutes to go. If they really wanted to score again in that situation, they could have, but they didn't. They brought in the reserves and saw the rest of the game out. Defense, I think, overall played okay. Like, you would like to see better finishing touches on this game from this defense to maybe keep Mizzou in it, but I can't heap too much blame on them because the offense was just not getting it done. And honestly, I was surprised of the way that Mizzou's defense played in spite of just really not much offensively in the first half from Mizzou. Like, there was, aside from Ahmad Hardy's 40-yard run and Donovan Alubade's 34-yard catch in Mizzou's, I believe, first 4 possessions of the game, if those 2 plays away, they ran 10 plays for 3 yards. Like, it just was not effective. And I credit the defense for having to play under tough circumstances like that. I think they did pretty much all they could, as much of a chance as they could give their team to win. But ultimately, wheels fell off, A&M got their traction, and they showed that they were the superior team. Well, it's not to say that this is a bad defense. I still think this is a very good defense. I think they'll show it in the final 3 games that they play. But tonight, you needed to be excellent, and Mizzou wasn't excellent on this side of the ball. And they were out of the 3 units that Mizzou had, offense, defense, special teams. This was the best one today. But, again, not good. And you get the result that you have, a 21-point loss at home to an eventual college football playoff team. Now, what's it mean? Well, it's a deflating loss for many, many reasons. I mean, the obvious one is that you no longer are in playoff contention. Mizzou next week, I think, will be out of the college football playoff rankings. I think they will drop out of the top 25 completely. Maybe they're still ranked in the AP or the coaches, whatever. Only poll that matters now is the CFP, and I think they'll be out of that. And once you get your 3rd loss, yeah, you're pretty much done. Even if you're in the SEC. Mizzou's schedule is not as daunting to where if they go 9-3, then you maybe think about putting them in. You could maybe have thought that with Oklahoma's schedule or Florida's schedule. Not with those. They're done. You just now look to the calendar and see which bowl game you're going to play in late December, maybe early January. Like they're Liberty Bowl and Duke Bowl are January 2nd. So that's what you look to. It's not fun. Like those bowl games now mean much less because there is more access to the playoff. And once you know that you no longer have that access, you pretty much immediately check out. I mean, look, if there's a little bit more to be played for, maybe it's, and I'm not saying that you have to believe it, but I'm sure Eli Drinkwitz will mention it. Like 10-win season is technically still on the table. If you win out, you go 9-3, and then you win the bowl game, you get to 10 wins, kind of like what they did last year. Get to 9-3, and then you win the bowl game. 3 straight 10-win seasons have been done. And I'm sure that's what Eli Drinkwitz will tell his team now going forward to try and keep playing hard for the rest of the season. But now you know that it's not going to end in a college football playoff bid, which ultimately was a goal that a lot of folks set for this team. I wouldn't have set it as an expectation, but it was a goal. You could have achieved that goal this year. It's not going to happen. So now you have to pivot to whatever else you were trying to achieve. But now what's hanging over this program is uncertainty, because this, if you want it, it revives your playoff chances, but it also shows the country that you can win big games like this, that Eli Drinkwitz can win big games like this at Mizzou. Now that he has lost another one of these, does this now mean that the talk is going to be louder now about Eli Drinkwitz leaving? It will be. And look, for folks saying, well, he could go 6-6 and then he'll be turned off by a lot of those open jobs. No. They're not looking at what Mizzou is doing now for the rest of the season. They like Eli Drinkwitz now. They are looking at the larger sample of what he's done over the last few seasons to put Mizzou in the standing that it's in. That's what matters to them more, and Eli Drinkwitz on all of their lists because of that. They're not going to take him off because he loses 4 straight games with a true freshman quarterback. Like that's not going to happen. So the talk is only going to get louder because that's the only thing that people will be able to focus on when it comes to talking about Mizzou, because they're not in playoff contention. They're just waiting on where their bowl game's going to be. And now the attention will turn to the coaching carousel. I don't know what it means. Eli Drinkwitz is the only one that really knows what it means. Maybe he still signs the extension. Maybe it happens this week and all the talk goes to bed. I don't know. I have no clue. But that will now be the discussion. There's a whole lot of uncertainty now on who is leading Mizzou into the future because of the nature of this year's hiring cycle, because of the jobs that are open, and because of the job that Eli Drinkwitz has done, and now the pitch that those jobs can make to Eli Drinkwitz of, look, you've done awesome here, but you haven't quite gotten over the top. Come get over the top with us because we've got a little bit more. That'll at least be the pitch. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm not saying that Eli Drinkwitz agrees with it. Just saying that that's what other athletic directors that are trying to hire a coach this year at those big-time jobs, Florida, LSU, Penn State, Auburn, whatever it may be, that's what they'll say. And because Mizzou now is completely out of playoff contention, that becomes the swirling rumors around Eli Drinkwitz for the rest of this month. So buckle in. That's what the discussion is going to be around. Everything that we see now, even in Mizzou's last 3 games, like, yes, you still want to see them win it, but everything you see now, you have to view through the lens of, well, will this be here next year? If Drinkwitz leaves, who does he take with him? All of that gets viewed through this lens with every game that Mizzou now plays going forward in 2025. So, I mean, I'm not saying that I hope that we don't see good play. Obviously, you do want to see them play well, and you can have takeaways from that and how these players are growing, and you want to see them continue that at Mizzou. And I'm not saying that we won't see that, but you kind of have to brace yourselves for it now, because this will be the discussion for the remaining 3 weeks of the regular season. And once December hits, then you start to be on your toes with what the future could hold. And look, maybe they've got the extension done. Maybe Eli Drinkwitz still feels that this is the place for him and that he can get it done here. That'd be great. I think Mizzou fans would still prefer that. And he can put that all to bed by signing the extension and, all right, cool, let's go once again for next year. But because that hasn't happened yet, the questions are going to continue to get louder around that conversation. So that's another reason why it's deflating, and we'll see what it means going forward for Mizzou and their future after 2025. But this was kind of a full point game for that, because if Mizzou had won it, well, you not only keep hope for the playoff, but you prove that you can win those quote-unquote big games here at Mizzou. Mizzou had a couple of chances at it within the last few seasons. They had one a few weeks ago against Alabama, came up short. Can it happen here? We'll see. But another chance went by the wayside today. Thanks for joining us on the Knee Jerk Reactions. Again, leave a comment and subscribe to our YouTube channel if you don't already. We will be back on Monday at 4 o'clock on The Big Show. We'll obviously get Brendan's reaction. He was at the game, and I'm sure has a lot of takes, so you don't want to miss that. Monday at 4. Thanks for joining us on the Knee Jerk Reactions, and we'll see you back on this channel Monday at 4 o'clock.